our website, and there's a link to it on Facebook.
Yeah. Did you email me at the club?
Not yet.
Really?
Streaming is live.
I told her we want to find this game on no, I sent
I'll check. Yeah, we sent that response. I thought somebody was going to I'll make sure I check that. Last year, I think we covered it where it automatically covered it. Yeah. This way, Todd's got a key. I can get that back. I've got a key.
and then you make a right turn in the residential.
That could have been the process. That would be downstairs. I think Barb said you guys did send that in, but I don't know if she handles it. And I'll make sure that's right, you did start your camera. I'll check with Barb tomorrow. I'll shoot you an email.
He was further, to go back further.
Oh, yeah?
And there's a couple of voice places too.
That was just the first time. Oh, yeah? I can't tell you how many more there have been. You ever been to the Fairfield Mountain?
Forgive me.
We went to Baylor, actually, Wyoming. Oh, yeah. I've done a lot of
schools are starting to kick in. Separation time. Yeah, that's right. There's a wrench in the other schools. We do it again. You're streaming live with Toby.
Yeah. You were with them for 2 weeks. Yeah. Oh, no. I didn't win it.
They've been out there for a while.
Back to Utah.
Well deserved. And
Wow.
which thing on how to run the camera? Okay, so I want to use this one.
Oh, yeah? You know, we did
Use this one. Oh, not super.
Think about that. Right. Pick your thirds. Try and get the line near their eyes and kind of sort of close to one line or the other, whichever one you decide. And I could switch back and forth between the wide and the tight. Just go tight. This one we just want to try and keep it on tight. Right. Ready when you are.
We hit a Sally that. There was a snow up there.
We are live. Hi, Candy. Yes, very nice. Welcome. We get together. It'll be great. Nice to see you. Welcome.
So is it okay if
Nice to see you. Welcome.
Go ahead.
How are you? Nice to meet you.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, I want to get started. September meeting is a great meeting. It's the meeting where we do a lot of different things. We do some business. We have elections tonight. We have a review of some project. We have some updates on MCCD, Conservation District. We also have some update on the conservation camp in the summer. Just a couple of things first before we get to that. A couple of thank yous and some acknowledgments. We've been very fortunate in the past, the Brodhead chapter, to have received some awards. We were the chapter, Pennsylvania Chapter of the Year a year or two ago. We received an award from the Brodhead Watershed Association last year, the Exceptional Value Award. But those awards as a group are only because we have some really, really talented people within our chapter. And I just want to take a few minutes and acknowledge some people who have done some wonderful work for us. The first one is near and dear to my heart because this I'll call him a young man. He doesn't think of himself as a young man, but he was one of my students when I taught. Eric, will you come up here? You're dating yourself. That's okay. Only 30 years ago. 33 years. Eric is our current secretary. We'll see where he is in about 15 or 20 minutes. We'll see where he is in our office. But Eric Baird is our go-to guy, and Eric is just about everywhere, and he has done so much for our chapter over the years, and he was nominated, and state council found that his accomplishments were such that he was the Trout Unlimited Pennsylvania Council Volunteer of the Year. So let's. Sorry, no speech. If you want one, you can come up later. Second person is also someone I think you know quite well. He's been with us since the beginning, since 1977, founding member of the chapter. And he has been named the Environmental Leadership Award by the Northeast Environmental Partners, and that is John Baylor. We have two other members who I don't see here tonight, or at least right now, that also need to be recognized. Greg Malaska received, one of our members and board members, the Inky Moore Service Award for Pennsylvania State Council of Trout Unlimited. But he was also, and that's really a great award, he was also elected president of Pennsylvania Trout Unlimited for the next year. So we have an officer in the state from our chapter now. And then Craig Todd, also from the Northeast Environmental Partners, was awarded the Thomas B. Schellhammer Award. So that's a tremendous honor too. So these are the type of people in our group. I just want to recognize them in public because a lot of times they don't say anything, but something needs to be said about them because they've done such a good job. So overall, for those four people, let's give them a And I thank you. And since tonight's the elections, I have served every available term to be president. They won't give me any more, which is good. So I would just like to say thank you to the members and the officers and everyone I've named and has gone unnamed for all the work you've done over the last 4 years when I've been president. And also maybe even back 4 years or whatever when I was vice president. Because we've done a lot of work in that time. We've done a lot of projects. We still have a lot of projects to do. We're very, very active. And again, I thank you because we wouldn't have the chapter we have without your efforts. And I just want to thank you for that before I go into whatever happens in the elections. A couple of upcoming events, I put them in the newsletter. And by the way, if you did sign in, please sign in, because if you're a possible member or someone who's willing to join and wants to join, if you get on our mailing list, even if you're not a member, we'll send you the newsletter. And you'll find all these things are listed in there. But we have coming up, we'll be represented at the Get Outdoors Day on the 15th, which is this Saturday. 1 to 4 or 12 to 4?
1 to 4 is the event. 12 o'clock is the setup. And if you, we can always use a hand if anybody, any of the members would like to come and sit at the table with us, even for an hour.
So we'll be there. It's at the Brodhead Park from 1 to 4, set up by 12, and we're ready to go. We also have a couple people helping out at the Jake's Day with the National Wild Turkey Federation. That's on the 22nd. This one's hot off the email, not hot off the press anymore. Hot off the email, I think, yesterday. The Cherry Valley National Wildlife Refuge is going to be doing some tree plantings. And honestly, I'm hoping they go within 150 feet of the creek, but we'll see what happens. But that's on Sunday the 23rd at 11 a.m. So Sunday the 23rd at 11 a.m. Eric, are we working on that, or something else we're getting?
That is for, that's an open invitation.
Secretary. Okay. Okay. We have Project Healing Waters on the 26th. We'll be helping out our veterans there. I don't know if anyone has the location for that.
Not yet.
Okay, we wait to hear from them. We're doing a fly fishing workshop at a Pocono Country Place on the 29th. That's 8 till noon. And afterwards, we have the ability to fish the lake where we're at there, right?
Yes.
Just looking ahead, because when the next newsletter would come out, the Quiet Valley Historical Farm Harvest Festival is the October 6th and 7th. We will have representatives there. And then we're looking at, one of the things we do when we do our projects, when we do a habitat improvement project, the whole purpose there is to create better habitat for fish, primarily trout. And one way you do that, you have to be able to justify what you did, and you have to be able to get data prove that, well, here's what we did, here was our treatment, and this is where it is at the end. And hopefully at the end, you have more fish and bigger biomass than you had at the beginning. And the way you do that is through electroshocking. So when we go into the projects, and whether it's the Pocono or Cherry Creek or whatever, we do a baseline. And I'm going to turn it over to Don, because Don is going to be working on that. So we'll get out to you, but if you've never gone electroshocking before, if you can join us when we do it, it is wonderful, because it's shocking, that's a really bad joke. It's can be very surprising what you can find, eye-opening, especially when you're not expecting to see an eel and it comes up and it starts wrapping around everything. But John, I'm going to turn it over to you quickly for that.
Okay, we'll be electrofishing Pocono Creek to do a follow-up where we did stream work. We did a before survey, and in one section we got 17 trout. They were all young a year. There was not one catchable size trout there. According to Todd's fishing experience, it's going to be a lot more there now that we put the habitat work in. So we'll be doing that. I don't have dates yet for that, but we'll probably be doing both sections of Pocono that we worked on. And that will probably, and both have been done before, so we'll have before and after data. That'll probably be a whole day deal to do 2 sections, population estimate. We'll get dates out. We can always use help, okay? Carrying buckets and helping haul fish and so forth. And we'll be doing Cherry Creek at the National Wildlife Refuge. We did a before section that has now been improved and has a lot of nice habitat devices in there. And so we're going to do that again. Yet the first year after, well, it hasn't even been a year. It was done this spring. And but we're going to do a follow-up there. Last year we did a section of Cherry Creek, and we did it as a demo for an ecology class from the high school. So just before I came here, I got an email from Mike Horn at the refuge asking if we could do it on October 11th with a rain date of October 16th. So I'm going to try to do that because there'll be an ecology class from the high school there to observe and maybe help out. So we'll get those dates out to you, and we can always use help, and it's kind of interesting to watch too. Usually a little bit humbling too. If you've fish the section, and then we do it with electrofishing gear. Sometimes it's downright embarrassing what's in there.
Thank you.
Yeah. I got an email, just before this meeting, I got an email that I want to share, and makes me feel a little bit old, because I'm not sure how many people in here remember Herman Henke. I know a couple of us do. Yeah. Herman retired to the Poconos, became a fly fisherman later in life, and got really enthusiastic, was a really active member of our chapter and board member for many years before he moved away to be with his children. And I got an email from his daughter in Colorado, and after some personal references, she said, "I'm so pleased the organization decided to initiate a scholarship in his name. We use a scholarship in his name from his family to send somebody to the conservation camp every year. And he asked me to put some of his money aside to buy stamps for the mailings. He would be so proud to see how that turned out. My husband and I have been donating to the fund each year and occasionally receive information about the lucky recipient. My mom passed in 2012, but was so excited about the scholarship. They both now are resting in White Marsh Memorial Park in Antwerp, PA, talking fly fishing all day." So she went on with some other personal references, but I thought it was really neat that they are keeping up with what we're doing with this scholarship fund.
Thank you, Don. Okay. One of the projects that we're going to start this fall, I guess this is over checking my email. We're looking at trying to conduct red surveys. And on a red, it's spelled with 2 D's, R-E-D-D. That is the nest of the trout, so they make a red. You can go out and you can see the relative health and reproductive capacity of the stream by going out and seeing counting the reds in the stream. And for brown trout, I believe that's late October and early November. Brook trout, it's a little bit later. Sometimes a little bit later, they take them off. But it's interesting to see. Sometimes they're easy to see, and all I can say is the best place I ever saw them, or it was the easiest for, in my case at that time, an untrained guy, still pretty much untrained, was Tom's Creek up in Delaware Water Gap Recreation Area, because that water is gin clear. And if you saw anything dug out, it was just like you drew up to do a video of it. It was like circle, circle, circle. And they form at the tail outs of the pools where the water is low, it's oxygenated, and there's a nice moving water there. So we're going to try to get that started this fall. You might see some information on that if you'd be interested in working on that and going out, maybe doing a little bit of training for a day or so, and then going out and counting that. Because if you do that, you can, again, get a baseline, and then you go out in subsequent years and you keep compiling your data. It's a scientific-based organization, compiling your data, and then you can judge it as time goes by to see how that reproductive capacity is occurring in that stream. Obviously, especially around here, the way the water's been going up and down, you're going to have good years and you're going to have not so good years. But the bottom line is, let's see what that trend is with time. So we're looking at that, and we're also, the board, at the last board meeting, voted to, we want to proceed with, how are we saying this? Used fishing line receptacles. A lot of places when we go out, you go out and you get a big tangle or something, and sometimes it's just a whole lot easier to just flip it on. And the last thing you want to do is take that monofilament, which is plastic, and throw it down in the ground, because critters get caught in it, and it's not really biodegradable. So we're looking at creating and actually putting out in the public areas and some of the places we've done projects, these monofilament receptacles. And Don, do you have any, I got an email from Rob about the other one, but I don't know much about those. But I was thinking, if you want to share that, I know you got some.
This isn't the finished product, but Copenhagen's Land Trust has been talking about this for a while also, because we own quite a few sections of headwater streams, small headwater streams that are open to public access, special regulations, catch and release, artificial lure only. Although the fishing pressure isn't really great on those stretches of stream, I do walk them regularly to monitor them. We monitor the Michael's Creek on the 800 acres of Oakland Fish Association property. Pocono Land Trust holds the conservation easement on that 800 acres, and so one of our members monitors that every year, walks the entire stretch of stream that the Hoagley owns, and those are places that pretty conscious fishermen that fish there. But as we walk those, we still find pieces of tippet, monofilament, and it's some of it may be inadvertent. You crumble it up a little bit and stick it in your pocket or whatever, and it comes out. And they're there forever. So we talked about there are a lot of designs. If you've seen designs that are in coastal areas along beaches where there's a lot of surf fishing that's done, those receptacles are much larger, all right? But they're designed to take that big tangle of monofilament and stuff it in there, and it's contained. And then periodically you go and empty them out. So what we're looking at is something a little smaller for our areas here, because we're dealing mostly with finer tippet and stuff. But a piece of electrical conduit and a cap that goes onto it so that you can take that cap off and empty it out. And a bottom, of course, and a small slit in it. You don't want the slit to be too large or the opening to be too large, because then you get all kinds of other things stuffed in there. But that's what we're talking about. And some decals placed on them from Trout Unlimited and Pocono Heritage Land Trust, and put up at various spots around those streams. So we set a date, I think, in November.
The November general meeting, we're hoping to actually just have a workshop and build those, so we can get them out on the properties.
We bring the materials here and do them, and then a follow-up day or a couple of days to go out and locate them in various places. We talked to Trout Township about having them placed along the Brodhead in the areas that are open to public access fishing in Trout Township, the Brodhead parks and stuff. So, and Ed was very receptive to that idea for Trout Township. So that's kind of what we had in mind. So, and then any of us, as we're out there fishing in those places, can take them down, unscrew them, empty the stuff out of the bag, and put them back up. That's what we're talking about here. So, all right.
Thank you, Don. So we have a little workshop coming up in November with the main things. Intake will be made. Ian, do you want to speak now, or?
Yes, I'll give you something to speak. First of all, I want to welcome Candy, who wants to learn to fly fish shop. She was sent our way by Brian Wagner. I basically bumped into you down at an event down in the Forks of Delaware chapter, and since she lives along with Pocono Creek, Kathleen and I are going to get together, and we'll sit down and give her a little part lesson, get her up to speed, since she missed all of our fly fishing events, or intro events this year. We don't want her to have to wait. We'll get together, and we're really glad you came out.
Thank you.
Advocacy-wise, and this is why I'm here, we are first and foremost a conservation environmental organization of fly fishers. I don't know what you're trying to tell me. Yeah.
Well, absolutely, don't turn around. They don't have school seats.
We have, Todd and I and several other chapter members have been quite active in the advocacy issues. Many of them come down from Trout Unlimited National. Some come down from state. We like to bring computers, pads, tablets here, so you can actually respond to these letters and petitions while you're here. Because all of us say, oh yeah, I'll do that when I get home, and then it's out of sight, out of mind. This month we have 3 real important advocacy issues going on. First one is our Pocono Waters campaign. That's a local campaign that we have signed on, our chapter has signed on to educate the public about what exceptional value waters are, what they aren't, and why they're important. So there's a petition asking the DEP and our legislators to continue to support protections for our exceptional value waters. Quick petition to sign. Second one is very, very important, the Land and Water Conservation Fund. And not many people have heard about it. It's been around since 1965. This is federal money that does not come from the taxpayer. It comes from offshore oil and gas leases. That money has been going towards preserving land, recreational purposes, land along the Appalachian Trail, Gettysburg Park, and Cherry Valley National Wildlife Refuge use some of those funds. Those funds expire September 30th. We've heard no grumblings about the being renewed, and they're very important. That's what this money has gone to for most of my lifetime. So Trout Unlimited has an action alert. If you come back and you fill in your name, your address, your zip code, it'll send a letter off to our congressional leaders asking them to please renew that one. Third one is Fish and Boat Commission, Class A streams and wild trout streams. We have 2, I think, trips to the Paradise on the wild trout stream. They do count people who respond, encouraging them to approve these upgrades for these streams. We'll have that here today, and we'll have this there next month as well. I believe the decision is made sometime in October. So we encourage all of our members to go online if you have not already and support the upgrades of these 2. And there's a whole list of streams throughout the state where they've done the assessment on the streams and they feel they qualify. One petition, send your endorsement for all. So we've got 3 tablets back there. We can be real busy or we can be really slow, but I encourage you to stop by and fill in your information and send your support to some of these issues. It's a busy advocacy month, very busy.
Okay. I guess the next thing, Greg's not here.
I was going to say, Ann or Dan could run it. Neither of them are technically running.
We're going to work very quickly. We'll do a business section here where we get our officers.
Does it matter that I am financial reviewer?
Nope, because in fact you're not
Okay.
doing.
You're gonna have to tell me what.
You're going to have to read what the piece of paper Todd's going to hand you.
Basically, put out the slate of candidates.
It's Trout.
Todd might have to talk through this. Tonight is actually the last general membership meeting of our calendar year. Pursuant to chapter operational procedure, I herein presented are the candidates recommended for your due consideration for election at the September 12th chapter elections. So essentially our nominating committee got together, members of the board, and developed a slate of candidates. The slate of candidates include President Eric Baird, Vice President John Smith. I'm going to go on to Treasurer Russell Thrall, Director Don Baylor, Director number 2 Glenn Lippincott, Director number 3 Larry Ott, Director number 4 Tim Fretz, Director number 5 Ari von Windergate. What's his last one? Okay, and actually we have an open slate for second. Pardon? Do you need to know them? Okay. We actually have an open slate for the secretary. Do we have any nominations from the floor for secretary? Okay. The board covenant directors with terms that continue through September 2020 and will remain Daniel Steer, Greg Malaska, Jeff Everly, and Kathleen Flynn. Any eligible qualified chapter member may be nominated from the floor. And this is respectfully submitted by Greg Malaska, who is not here this evening. Do we have any nominations from the floor? Okay, if not, I ask for a
Just pass it down. Vote yea or nay.
okay, all those in favor of this
You
ballot?
have to be a member.
Yeah. All those in favor of this ballot of candidates, say yay.
Yay.
Any opposed?
And we'll work on getting a secretary. So,
Yes.
thank you, ma'am. And you're the president.
No, I'm just president as of October 1st. You're the president until then. Can't hand it off yet.
It used to be the moment after the election. You're changing it already. I see that.
No, October 1st. Come on.
Couple things tonight. I want to introduce Adam Schellhammer. No, we're going to let you first. Go ahead. To give us an update on the Conservation District, and then we'll go with Roger, and then we'll go with his portion of it, and then we'll get into the
Sounds good.
Adam, thank you.
All right. Everybody, thanks for having me tonight. Can't believe it's been a year already. It's been a busy year at the district. This summer, of course, with the rain and everything, the technical staff has been out there tracking plumes, and I'm happy to say at least all the stormwater controls look to be working. It's actually been a pretty decent summer as far as, if you notice, our flood damage compared with other areas. None to speak of, really. I think that's a credit to everything that's been done in this county leading up to this point. So credit to everybody who's come before me and put those practices on the ground, had the foresight to be a little progressive. Had a busy year also with the environmental ed staff. At Rogers Crew, we installed the nature discovery area, which, if everybody's familiar with the Mattioli Pavilion, it's a new area. It's got an archway, which makes it very welcoming. But I guess with the general trend is kids aren't getting into nature like they once were. And I've been absolutely amazed by what this little area has done to engage kids and get them in there. It provides kind of a safe, a little more inviting space. It's not as random, or it's, to us, the woods looks inviting, but it makes it a little more inviting for kids who may not feel as comfortable as maybe we would. So I've been absolutely astounded by how well it's been received. Our Saturday programs have been just incredible. And nobody's more, I guess, surprised or excited by that than me. So that's something that's been really exciting. This year we've had more creek snorkeling events, which is, a fish-eye view of everything going on in the creek, and that's been very well received and just a blast. We do have a couple upcoming fundraisers for the environmental ed staff. I think we still would accept tickets. Anybody, we have our Kettle Creek Fund. This year it's not an auction, it's just an evening, it's a film contest with games, activities, things like that, and entertainment. That's going to be Friday, September 21st. If anybody's just looking for a good night out at Trout Lake, I think it's going to be a lot of fun. On November 10th, the district's having a fundraiser. We're calling it the Protect the Tap, and that is a celebration of clean water through the celebration of beer and wine and booze and food and whatever we create with it. So we're trying to engage a different group, folks that, whether they know it or not, they want to protect clean water because it also protects your beer. So that'll be November 10th at Blue Ridge Winery for anybody who's interested. Live music and free entry. A couple of programs that we've had come online here in the district that I think is going to be a big help. Get a little bit more oversight at the local level. We took on the Act 38 agreement, which is specifically for agriculture. Mostly equine operations, but making sure they're online, doing their part to maintain water quality and not degrading the stream bank, making sure their nutrients are cared for. I know most people probably don't think of Monroe County as being heavy ag, but the pockets we do have, it's pretty significant. So I'm glad that we're taking a closer look at that at the local level, and now the oversight will be from us, not Williamsport. So I think that will be beneficial. We also have a new PennDOT agreement where we are going to provide services to our engineers, like sizing of culverts, and in return they're going to use their expertise with heavy equipment and their operators to possibly take on stream restoration work. I know Don sent me some ideas along the Pocono already, so we're looking to parlay our efforts into some restoration work where we need it. Don also helped us with our macro survey on gate lanes number 38 above Camelback. The old rail bed that's blown out there is just a consistent sore spot for a lot of people in the county. Every once in a while, the walls slough off and dump more sediment into the creek. So we applied for a Growing Greener grant for phase 1, which is engineering and permitting. With Don's help, with the macro survey, we're going after $75,000 for phase 1. And that's $70,000 of a potential $1.2 million project. So we've got a ways to go, but step 1. So we're hoping to get that in October and get the ball rolling. And we did get a $50,000 grant to install a riparian buffer in front of the ESSA headquarters along with McMichael. If any of you guys, it's the early bear spot as you're driving on 80. You can see it on 80 westbound pretty easily. They just cut their knotweed. It's fairly unique. It's going to be 150 feet deep, but it's also going to include fruit-producing trees, pawpaws, apples, pears, raspberries, blueberries, no stone fruits like peaches. Those are too difficult. But we're going to tie that with United Way, and once that becomes producing, it's going to go into their food pantry system, and then ESSA has agreed to help us maintain it and do some cleaning and things like that. So we're addressing recreational, environmental, social issues. I think it checks a lot of boxes, and I hope it's a good foundation piece for what we want to do coming along. If anybody knows of anybody else who wants a buffer and is willing to maintain it for at least 25 years, and is willing to incorporate fruit trees, we might have upwards of $250,000 available to us that I think we're the only district who's gone after it so far in the state. If you know a landowner, a business, anybody with streamside land that wants a buffer and is willing to work with us, we'd be happy to try to put the money on their land. So, and that's a zero match. So no match required. It's phenomenal. That's all I have for updates. Does anybody have any questions? I thought there's been a lot going on, so if anybody has any.
I heard the conservation district is back to a level 3.
That is correct. Yep, so the board voted to release. It was an interesting year of limbo, but I think the roundtable we had where all the DEP representatives from the Northeast and the central office, I think they put it in perspective of how important it is for us to have that tool in our toolbox. Very happy to say that the board decided to reinstate our level 3 delegation, I think as of May or June. And so we're back to level 3. I think it's pretty exciting. And we still are going to make every effort for voluntary compliance and do exactly what we were doing. But we have the oversight of the local level. We can be involved as much as possible instead of relying on somebody else. Yeah, Tom.
At that round table meeting, I imagine you have notes from it. I recall the people there from the state saying that anyone on the board who has a conflict of interest should recuse themselves from any votes.
That would be generally advised for, I would assume, that somebody on any board. So, yeah.
That hasn't been happening.
Bring that up with my board, I suppose.
Maybe they need reminders when there's votes coming up at the meetings.
That would be your problem. So, yeah, sure, Tom.
What kind of buffer is recommended for agricultural properties, for any farms that are along streams?
There's always recommendations. Agriculture falls under a little bit of a different umbrella. I mean, 150 feet is recommended for, I mean, that's about as good as it gets. As far as nutrient reduction, sediment reduction, things of that nature, thermal impacts. But a lot of the Department of Ag programs are looking for 35 feet of buffer. And there's no requirements for stream fencing. I know which is a big sore spot for some of our staff here, but that's just not required. So we're trying to educate folks who may have cattle or even horses for the good of the animal. It's a healthier animal if we can keep them out of the streams. The issues with udder health, hoof health, things like that. So it's better for herd health, better for the environment. And if you're into fly fishing as long as you are, it's better for fishing. So, agriculture, they've got some different requirements, but suggested most of the programs are about a 35-foot buffer.
Would that be with trees?
Trees, shrubs, I mean, even a no-mow zone, or if you have a cropping area, if you just don't crop that area, really anything is better than nothing. So putting any distance between where you operate and the creek side will help stabilize that stream bank and reduce thermal impacts, sediment, things like that. So anything's recommended. Other than that, is a general plea to all of our better instincts. It's been a crazy political year, I guess, in a couple of years. As we move forward, we've got a lot of work to do protecting our streams, and the streams don't care whether they're red or blue or an elephant or a donkey, it doesn't really matter. If you like fishing, you love the resources, find your commonalities, and just do what you can to support the protection of our waters. And I think it's a pretty good way to go about it. So that's my plea. Thanks, guys.
Thank you. Hey, Roger, if you can come up.
It's good to be in front of you again. I want to thank all of the Trout Unlimited members who showed up at Conservation Camp and worked with our kids again this year, as well as the fly fishing programs you did here in March. We only had 21 conservation campers this year, and I'm sending a plea out to everyone for next year. It's getting, unfortunately, a little bit more difficult to get teenagers to come to this camp. Once we get them there, they're gold. But getting them there is really, really tough. So
Think about next year, third Saturday in July, camp will start again at Stony Acres. We have enough scholarships to pay anybody who wants a scholarship is not denied a scholarship. The cost for camp, even if they're not asking for a scholarship, is $200 for the whole week. That's everything. That's food, lodging, and everything. We have a great deal of organizations, Trout Unlimited being one of them, that supports that program. A lot of volunteers who come in and do programs for us. We just need to continue to get kids there. So it's open to Monroe County students first, anywhere from 14 years old up to high school seniors. And again, the cycle will start again next July. The camp will come around again. And we hope that we can get a few more people. We do open it up to out-of-county kids. So if you have, relatives, grandkids, nieces, and nephews, there's always room for normally a few out-of-county kids that we also take, because we're going to do the camp. We want to get as many kids there as we can. And those of you that have worked with those kids, I think you can. They get a lot out of the camp. You guys, whether their time flies or practicing casting out in the field with you, they always get a good kick out of it, and hopefully you get some fly fishermen in the future. I think one kid we had last year at camp, getting his name, Jake. Yeah, I know he is really now he was a fly fisherman before camp, but he's even a bigger, more excited fly fisher person. So I will throw that plug out for camp. We had, as I said, 21 kids. I wasn't able to get any of them to come and speak in front of you and tell them about their experience. But if you're not familiar with conservation camp, it's a week-long event. It starts on a Saturday. They go through programming. We use East Stroudsburg University's Stony Acres facility. That's where they stay. They spend 2 days on the Delaware. This year we were riding the storm right before they closed the Delaware. We got our 2 days in. It was the best river trip I've seen in 30-some years, because we only saw 3 kayaks in 2 days that weren't ours, because nobody else was out there. And we saw 34 bald eagles, 34 different bald eagles, which was unbelievable to see out there. Kids had a great time. They also used the ropes course at Stony Acres, Pennsylvania Game Commission, Fish and Boat, Conservation District, Bureau of Forestry, and group sportsmen's clubs, Tobiana Conservation, Blue Ridge, Cherry Valley. All of them provide programming for us and continue to do. Some of those groups have been doing programs since the camp started in 1975. This will be, I think, the 43rd or 44th year or something coming up this summer. So please get that word out for us, and thank you again for your support and your programming and the scholarships that you provide for that camp. The Environmental Ed Center also is providing a lot of educational programs for school kids. All the 4th graders in Monroe County do visit the bog every year on a field trip. We've been able to keep that field trip active for over 30 years with a little bit of work with the school districts and the Kettle Creek Environmental Fund, which pays for some of that programming, so the schools who have a very tight budget don't have to worry about it. We work with other age groups as well as adults in college and things like that. And Adam mentioned briefly creek snorkeling. And this is a program which we just started 2 years ago, and it's simply a matter of putting a life jacket on a child of any different age, putting a snorkel mask on them, and letting them float down the creek and look what's under the water. And it is amazing the reaction you get. They have no idea. They can stand there and look at a creek, and they're seeing rocks, but they're not seeing it. Once they start floating, they're going to see the little bass and even sometimes the aquatic insects. They've encountered some trout in a few places, and of course, you come across a big brown trout in the Brodhead or something, and the kids just light up. We found different spots in the county that are real short system. We don't use a lot of creek. We try to keep it shallow, but they've been in Cherry Creek out at the Wildlife Refuge. It's a very good spot to do it. The Brodhead, certain places where we can get at it. We've been up at Tobiana Creek near Warner's Falls, and even out in Tunkhannock Creek out at Blakesley. And it's amazing. The best place to creek snorkel in Pennsylvania is Monroe County, because you got the water quality. We talk to people in the center part of the state, and they just can't get the clarity to make it worthwhile for the kids. So that's something new. Gets the kids out, and group adults too, and gets them looking at the water, and it gives us a chance to talk more about the whole ecosystem as a whole. And they're not really disturbing. They're just floating right over the top of it, looking down and seeing what's happening. So there's a lot of other things going on. Thanks again to TU for all the support you guys give us, and the fly fishing programs you do with us. And that's all I have, unless there's any questions. remember to help us get kids to camp.
Do you have brochures, Roger, to give to the schools? I mean, prior to.
Yes,
I mean,
we'll have the
yeah,
2019
biology.
brochures will come out in January. We send them to science teachers. The best recruiting we can do is from kids that have already been there. They'll get their friends. But it is amazing. The first night of camp, one of the things we ask the kids is why they're there, and about 75% say their parents made them come, and they are ready to go home. And by the next Saturday, you can't get rid of them. It is the most amazing transformation I've ever been a part of in all my years of education. That week-long camp, no phones, totally unplugged. You can imagine a teenager without a phone the first few days, they're going through shapes of their own. By the last day, it's a totally different experience.
What's the age limit?
You have to be 14 to the high school senior. If a high school senior graduates in June, they are eligible for that year's camp. So it's usually 14 to 17 or 18 is what it breaks down.
Is this something that our chapters could help plug at some of the schools?
Certainly, if you have contact with any teenagers or anything, like I said, I'll have brochures available. It's on our website by January. All of the stuff's out. We know it's going to be the third week in July. That's when it always is. But the whole brochures will be available in January, and I'll make sure that when you guys have your first meeting, I'll have a whole stack here and you can spread them out. Going to the schools is good, but kids are bombarded with so much stuff these days. It almost has to be a one-on-one convincing to get those kids there.
I just wanted to publicly thank you and Kettle Creek and the Monroe County Conservation District for the BioBlitz event that you held on Pocono Heritage Land Trust Land Nature Reserve. So we had Trout Unlimited members there, to be in the Conservation Association members who helped out that day. So I just wanted to thank you on behalf of the Land Trust for doing that. Our numbers just came out recently.
Yeah, we just finalized, and it was 941 separate species of plants and animals in 24 hours on a 180-acre site, without really a lot of.
In downtown Stroud.
Yeah, right on Godfrey Ridge, right above downtown Stroud. Amazing one. And we do that every other year. So in 2020, we'll be looking to do another BioBlitz somewhere in Monroe County. The location hasn't been determined. So we're always open for suggestions on that too.
For those not familiar, there's a 5-acre pond or 5-acre lake, which is the headwaters to Glen Run that feeds the Brodhead at the end, and that's open to public access.
Maybe you can get them to the Boy Scout troops and the Cub Scout troops.
Yeah, we tried a lot of different things. It's hard to get scouts because scouts that are still scouts at that age are going to scout camp. So that's a tough audience to capture them from. We've gotten some, but not a whole lot.
Another badge.
Yeah.
Roger, one other thing, you mentioned Jacob Smith, but he has outfished many of us who've been fishing for a lot, most of our lives. So he spent 2 weeks in Wyoming with a few of us this summer. But he talked about the conservation camp experience and just it opened his eyes, and he's incredibly good. He's been invited to be a participant in the National Youth Fly Fishing competition, which is going to be held in North Carolina and South Carolina. So he's, has just yeah,
Sounds calm.
tribute to the work that's done.
We appreciate all the support we get from your organization and the other ones in the county that let us do it. So thank you very much, and I'll turn it back over.
All right. One of the things that we love to do, among other things, is get out in the creek and do some work. And when we do our habitat projects, we like to get down here sometimes. We wrote a grant last year for Embrace a Stream and received some funding to do work on Cherry Creek. Cherry Creek runs through the former Cherry Valley Golf Course, which is just down from Godfrey Ridge, which we just spoke about, in a very unique valley, Cherry Valley. It's a very unique little stream. It starts up by Route 33, flows eastward through one valley and goes into the Delaware River in the Delaware Water Gap. It's limestone influence. It's not truly a limestone stream, but in the headwaters there's enough influence there with limestone and rock that it gets more alkalinity than you would normally expect to see. Some of the streams up here have almost no buffering capacity, but that has a bit. So we work with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, and you're going to see the thank yous at the end. A lot of groups were involved with that. So I just thought this would be a good spot. It's a 2-year project and multiple phases. And just kind of bring you up to speed on the types of things we're doing, what we're doing in the creek. So whether you go there for a day or whether you make a donation or you go to the banquet, so you know what are the types of things we do and why we do them. I know I've had requests, well, that's great, you talk about that, but why do you do that? So that's what I want to spend a little bit of time tonight. It's not a long presentation, but if we could do something with the lights, perhaps.
Alexa, turn off the lights.
Alexa. I'm dating myself. How's that? Is that better? Clap. There we go. Clap. Anyways, so this is just an update. I don't have those things. I apologize. So we're at the Cherry Valley National Wildlife Refuge, and what you're looking at there is simply what used to be golf course fairways. Those fairways, and then when this picture was taken, that grass was about 3.5, 4 feet high. It's now 5 feet high, 6 feet high. Very tall grasses and trees. That's looking away from the creek away. So that's kind of behind us. Obviously, we're focused along the creek and in the creek, but that's just a kind of set shot that this is where we're at. It's kind of open. We have this meandering stream coming down through. Before we got there, there was very little structure in the creek. You can imagine a golf course, you mow down to the edge, cut trees down, you have to get golf balls to go through, and you don't, there's nothing in the creek. Also, the geology of the area is such that you're really at the end, the terminal moraines of that area of the glaciers. The Wisconsin glaciers went through here 16,000 years ago, receded back, and left everything behind them. What they left a lot of at that point is real small stuff. No big rocks, no boulders, nothing like that to provide habitat for our trout. So we want to make some changes with that. So I want to talk about some of the devices that we installed. The first one's a rock crossvein. And there's an image of it. Now this is taken from the bridge. I don't know if you're doing more right. But it's not a dam, thank you. Woo, there we go. What it does is it's high on the edges, lower in the center, and it's angled upstream. Now you say, well, why don't just build a dam? Well, we don't want to build a dam because that's going to slow it down and it's going to make a nice place to deposit sediment. We don't want to collect the sediment. We want to make the water move. But what you'll notice is each one of these little current seams now is running it away from the edge, it's folding it back inward towards the center, and it runs down the center. And what you can't see in that picture, but you see if you were there, is right where the current runs down through, as it goes towards the shade in the back, there are multiple grass beds in there. And if you're a fish, this is great because now you can hang out right at the edge or in that grass, and the food in the current comes right to you. On the edge over here, we have some boulder placements to provide some cover for little fish. So when we're looking at this, we're trying to fold this in and create the channel in the center. One of the things that when we talk about these devices, a lot of people, you go there when the water's low like this, you say, well, it's not doing much. And you're right. Most of these devices are using gravity and the weight and the power of moving water to scour the stream bed and make it deeper, create some shadow, create some cover. So in low water, it just kind of looks pretty, might give you some oxygenation of the water there, and it gives you a current seam down the middle. But the real effect comes when you have a lot of flow. So that's a rock crossvein. Next one is a single log vein deflector. Now, what we're looking at here, this is downstream of where we were. You're looking downstream. And again, you have this vein where it's lower in the center. There's the log. It's buried back in the bank, anchored with rock, and the rocks in the bank are higher than the tip of the log. Again, what that does is the current comes down, it folds the water over it, so it comes down, comes over the top, and we can see this incredible current seam we're getting right down the middle of the creek. You want to know how to find the current seam? Follow the bubbles. The bubbles follow the current. All right. So here we have a single log main deflector. So again, this is kind of labor intensive. You have to dig back in the bank. You drop the log in there. You cover it back up with big rock. And then you hand place all the smaller rocks over the top of that. Over time, current just simply comes over the top of that and comes down the creek. If I was a trout, I think like a trout sometimes. A lot of times, apparently, I don't think enough like a trout. But here, I mean, you've got a little bit of holding water in the shade here, and it comes around here. It digs deep. You can hide under here. You can be in the depth of the current. And this is a nice, wonderful feeding lane with a little bit of slack water behind it, not a lot. So fish, they like to be, they like to feed easy. Sit over if there's not much current. Slide over, eat, come back. Slide over, eat, come back. So that's why you're doing that. So that's a single log main deflector. We've got 2 of those in the creek, by the way. Then random boulder placements. It's really a misnomer because truly it's not really random. You're not going to spend all that money for heavy equipment, machinery, and then just say, well, put them anywhere you want. But it's called random boulder placement. But if you'll notice what's happened, and if you look at the top right here, excuse me, this is our single log deflector up here, log main. So there's that current seam that's coming down, and it comes down here, it comes along, we've got a boulder on that side, we've got boulder here, boulder here, boulder here, and look at all those current seams we're creating around all those rocks. And when the water gets high, it scatters out around those rocks, and it gets deeper. So instead of being 6 inches deep, it's a foot deep. I can tell you, when you fish small streams of the Poconos, if you can find a foot knee-deep water that's got current, that's plenty of water for a decent-sized fish. Not just little, but decent-sized fish. So imagine this stretch, and by the way, if you take all those rocks out of there, that's what the stretch looked like before we started the work. There was no big rocks. So you can imagine with no rock crossway at the top, no single log main deflector, and no random boulders, that 100 yards of stream, there was nothing there. It's just flat, shallow, gets baked by the sun, temperature goes up, no place for fish to hide. So not a really good place to be at the time if you were a trout. Now, all the little trout, when there's little trout, have a place to hide. All the bait fish have a place to hide and scurry. Okay? You increase the flow. We should get better bug life in there. We have more oxygenated water. We're increasing that. So if you get more food and more hiding places for fish, you should get more fish. This is a stone deflector with an opposite bank stabilization. In other words, we put rocks on this side, we put rocks on this side. This is hard to see because, one, I'm short, so I can't take high pictures like this. Okay, I wouldn't even get on the ladder. But what you basically get, a deflector, when you talk about a stone deflector, it's really a right angle, and you just turn it like this. Okay, so you've got a 90 degree, you got a 30 degree, you got a 60. So all you geometry people out there, you just take that, and that's what it is. Here's the current coming down. So that's multiple tons of rock. But notice how wide the stream was before we put the deflector in. We cut that stream down by at least 30%. Now, why do that? Well, when you take a set width of a stream, or you're talking fluids here, and you narrow or you compress the area through which the fluid can flow, it has to flow faster. I believe that might be Bernoulli's principle. I'm not quite sure. But bottom line is, when you narrow that stream, it's going to go faster. Why is that important? Well, when the water's up and it's doing work, when the water goes faster, it's going to dig deeper. And notice we also have rocks here, boulders. Not truly random, but they're there for a reason. So as this narrows the stream and you get an increased current flow here, it will scour areas around those rocks. So that's a stone deflector. You don't have to build them that big, but in this stream, in this spot, is a very wide spot. And again, you don't want it to be shallow because it'll get baked. And right now there are no trees. There are some trees downstream. There's a few trees upstream. But there's several hundred yards in the middle where the fairways were, where there's no trees. And so we need to have depth in the creek. We need to have some current flow. So that's a stone deflector. bank stabilizations. This isn't a turn in the creek. This is, again, we're kind of moving downstream through the project. This is the out. What you're looking at is you're on the inside of the turn. The creek is doing this. It's turning. And this is a massive bank. There's a fairway up on top. I never played the course, but we found plenty of golf balls here. So I know that people are near the fairway. And you notice we had to drop some massive boulders in here. And we're going to throw little stuff on top of it, but we have massive boulders in there to help deflect that flow and keep that bank from eroding, the trees from falling down, and that type of thing. So that's one thing we've done. And then on this side, and I think the next picture shows that, again, rocks on the opposite side. So where that picture was taken, so if I was standing on there where those rocks are, looking towards the photographer, this is what I see, and that's what we have. So again, excuse me, what we're doing here is we're protecting that bank. Now what's going to happen, it's already happened up here where we started a couple weeks earlier. As the waters come up, you have all those little nooks and crannies in those rocks. They fill up. They fill up with sediment and silt. And then you're going to get, it kind of raises that bank. And then we're actually getting grasses starting to grow in the areas we did first. So over a period of time, you're going to raise your bank a little bit, which again helps compress the stream. And when it gets high, not as much water runs out. It stays in the channel and does its work around the rocks. And by the way, this log that you see going across here, nature put that there. We didn't put that in there. And you got to be careful if you ever step on that rock, because the other day when we were working, I just got my picture taken like this, and it was like, you know, all showing off, and I stepped off. And nature did its work, because what looked like about 6 inches in front of the rock was about a foot. And I lost my balance, and I ended up in the creek. It's a perfect example of what happens when you do stream work. I don't know if it's good. I didn't see any fish, but I certainly got as wet as the fish. So we've stabilized the banks. And just, in fact, I'm going to back up a second. Yes. It's hard to tell here because of this framing. The trees, there's a massive log here. And that was put in there too, and that's part of the next device. It's a takeoff of what we saw before, but it's a different one. And that's a log frame stone deflector. So it's a stone again. But now we have it framed out with some massive logs. And again, the water's low. But when the water gets high, notice we've now narrowed the stream. When the water comes down, it's forced back to the center. And when it gets forced back to the center, it's going around these large boulders we placed in here, not randomly. And then it's going to cut around and scour the edges, and you'll see that happening. So that's just another type of deflector. Now you say, well, why did you do so many different ones? Why don't you just use this one or this one? Well, part of the grant was to make a classroom for the Fish and Wildlife Service, so they could bring people in and say, well, this is what a log frame stone deflector looks like. This is what this looks like. This is this type of stream. This is a brush deflector, so that people can see how they were constructed, and then we can also see which one worked best in this type of stream. Brush deflector. We got a little high on the bank with this one, but this was made out of Christmas trees. This is a neat one. We've done the rock ones before. We've done the log ones before. We've never done a brush deflector before. So we had some donations of used Christmas trees. And what you do is you stake them in the same, that same, right angle triangle, 30, 60, 90. And you stake them together in the stream. And you tie them in there. And as the water comes down, it's going to hit that. When it's fresh and young like that, it makes so many places for things to hide. It's incredible. We were doing this, and as we're putting the last couple of Christmas trees in on the back row, which we'll see in the next slide, the little minnows were coming around already, swimming around, checking it out. There are a lot of herons and things around. If you need to hide, you can hide under that, and you're in good shape. But now as that matures, it's going to rot. But as it's maturing and beginning to rot, every time the water comes up, the water's going to strike those trees, and it loses velocity. And there's a suspended load in that stream. And as that suspended load hits that and slows down, the load drops out. Think of it as snow fencing in the water, except it's a Christmas tree. So as that sediment comes down, it hits that, fills in, so eventually you fill in that area. And again, you can see, I don't remember what it was there, it was about 12 to 15 feet from the shore we were.
13 if my memory serves.
13, it was a different number, yes. So narrows the stream, which again, now here at least, you'll notice we have some canopy. We have some trees. We're now down where they did cut everything down to the golf course. So now we're sending some water back into the shade down to the next device. So that's a brush deflector. And then if you look at that from the bottom, looking up, it looks like that. So you can really kind of, you know, Christmas tree, Christmas tree, Christmas tree, Christmas tree, Christmas tree. And they're parallel rows coming this way with the butt ends at the top and then coming down to it. Now this is really low water right now. In fact, the water is lower there than when we built it. So it got lower. So we did go back. I went back the other day. I had to check some things out. And we're also getting, it's catching leaves, it's catching debris, it's acting like a strainer. So it's beginning to do its thing. So we're excited about that. We put one in there, and we're going to be putting another one in the next phase. So we have more Christmas trees, and we can do that some more. Okay, log cross vein with log throat. Gee, Todd, it looks like a dam. But really it's not. We have diagonal log going up this way, a vein. Same thing on this side. Covered with rock, higher on the outside than the inside. But instead of letting the center just do its thing, there's a log across. And it does back it up a little bit. But what you really see, you can really see when you're on site, is how much of the bottom it's scoured out and starts pushing this really fine gravel out and creating a little bit of a pool underneath. And downstream of that, we have more boulders. Downstream of that, we have boulders, and then we have another log vein deflector and a bank stabilized. And then we're almost down to the bridge when you come in. So these are all the different things we've done. And so, you know, some of the big work was certainly done with machines, but all those small rock placement, that was all done by hand. The nice thing about working up there, when you go for a work day, is it's not just rocks, but there's bergamot, I believe. Is that bergamot?
Yes.
Okay. Saw that one day. We got a young sycamore growing about 20 to 25 feet off the stream. It's going to create some great shade, morning shade in the future. Black-eyed Susans are around. And one day, Jerry and I were having a little contest, golf balls. So I don't know how long ago they were actually physically golfing in there, but I think there were 13 or 14 golf balls that one day. It was just fun. Like when I was a kid, I grew up near a golf course, and you'd go looking for them and get the eye for it after a while. And I know I went for the one, and I saw one, and there were like 2 more of them. But there's all sorts of sights and sounds up there. So that is an overview of what we've done so far in our first phase. But we have an additional 2 phases coming, one downstream and one upstream. And we'll see similar devices placed there when we get all those things done. Here's just some photos of some of the work days. I certainly don't have everybody, I apologize, but they're the one pictures I can find. And I just want to take the time as we're halfway through this project, if you will, to thank the groups, the Fish and Wildlife Service, Mike Horn, he's the Refuge Manager, Trout Unlimited, Poker Heritage Land Trust, Monroe County Conservation District, our members and friends in TU, Brodhead Watershed Association, Trout Unlimited for the grant. We had some Master Watershed class volunteers, and the Stone Quarry gave us a good discount on all of the lot. So that's what we've been doing, and we continue to do it into the next phase. Eric, do we have any new devices, or is that pretty much what we're going to see?
We're just going to be repeating the same. We're basically just going to be doubling the number, well, like tripling the number of them.
Okay. So when you think about what Don said when we do electroshocking. When we looked at that creek when it was first there, it was devoid of really almost any structure whatsoever. If there was any cover, it was very along the edges if there were any grasses. But now we have long grass and it's hanging over and it kind of creates a little bit of shade there. When you have a golf course, that's cut down or cut very close to it. So there was very, very little there. We have a lot of habitat in there now. And we have a lot of devices in there now to help create more habitat. So what we're hoping for, certainly we're not looking for horrible, horrible floods, but letting nature do its thing, let the rains come down, let the snows melt, let the water run downhill, and create even better habitat for fish. And then eventually the plan is to open that up for fishing on a permanent basis, much like they do for the hunting. And I don't know how they'll go about that yet. So eventually it will be open for public use because we usually work on public accessible properties because we want our work to be enjoyed by the public. So that's the update for now. I don't think I have anything worth showing, but I'll certainly answer any questions you might have. We could have some lights gone. Oh, I like that. Thank you. Any questions?
Todd, do you need to know what you're doing to show up and let it in?
No,
Okay.
no. Why even better if you don't?
Just to give you an idea, the first section that was done last year, we didn't get to survey it beforehand, but it looked like a driveway. That's how lacking in habitat it was, and I'll guarantee you, if there were a few catchable sized trout in there, I would be surprised. We electrofished it last year twice, just one run as a demo for a high school class, and we got 18 to 20 nice catchable sized brown trout. And that's not the total population.
They're wild fish right now.
Wild brown trout, yeah, so they're there. It's like, if you build it, they will come.
So, any other questions?
And we did another section that hadn't been worked on, about equal length. We got 4 fish, 18 or 20 compared to 4. That's what happens.
Another benefit to this, which many of you know, that other sections of Cherry Creek are stocked fisheries, and there are large fish there, but they don't honor property boundaries. So they move up and down, and because this will be special regulation order action police, those upstream clubs and stock are really happy about the idea that these fish will move down there and not go home till Friday. They will be caught and released and be able to move back up again. And they move down because there are a number of cold water springs and small cold water tributaries that come down in this section of the stream. So the water warms up above, they move down and hang out there.
They move down and bold and migrate back upstream as well, and spawn.
And we'll be looking for more Christmas trees, I imagine.
Yes.
So when it comes to the holiday season this year,
Natural ones, please don't give us your plastic. Don't put plastic in the grate. I want to get rid of it.
They were 40 Christmas.
Yeah. We stashed a couple in the bank. I know we got just a couple that just didn't quite fit, so we just put them up in the bank.
we had collected over 200 compliments of Stroud Township with their help, as they have drop-off places in Stroud Township. And, so we collected over 200 and stockpiled them.
So when you see that next flyer come around, I know we still have that one bank to do. See if you want to help out. We can have you there, put on a pair of gloves. You can do as much as you want and as much as you can. That's all we can do. Everything you do helps the project get closer to completion. Like I said, we had a great first year on it. We have another year, and it looks like we also have another potential grant coming that we're partnering with some groups to try to do more work. So it's quite a labor of love.
And a great core workout.
Now I'm just going because what's really neat is when you can, I'm just talking to some of the other projects we've done in Monroe County, where you do the work and you come back later and you fish it and you catch wild fish in places that you created for them. That's really, really a fantastic feeling. Sometimes they're only little, but you know what? That's a second-year brown trout. And the odds of that trout getting that size, even the second year, are really small. But you created the habitat to let that happen. And every now and then, you know. But that's really neat. It's happened to me on Michael's, it's happened to me on Pocono, in a couple different spots. You know, and sometimes it surprises you, because sometimes it takes 1, 2, 3 years for it to happen. And sometimes it's just almost right away because they want to be there. There's stuff there, but they just can't place some shelter. Because some of the best fishermen in here, in this area, aren't people. They're the herons and the otters and mink and everything else that gets fished. So when you can create places for them to hide and get away from those bugger herons, it's a good thing. But now, that's what we're doing at Cherry Creek. We're going to continue doing that. It's a great project. It's in process. If you get a chance, please hike the trails. It's the old cart trails up there at the old golf course. There's a lot. I don't know how many. What's the distance all the way around it? Does anybody know? Do you know? About 3 miles. 3 miles to do the whole thing, right? So it's a good walk. You need steps. Go up and do that, and eventually you'll be able to.
Eric, how many man-hours have you recorded that
I've
people
just
have worked on that?
about 170 man-hours from us for this year, just for the habitat placement.
Is it expected that those fields that were fairways will be populated with trees?
We're going to speed that. We're going to be speeding that up.
Well, the entire golf course was reseeded with 4 proprietary U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service seeding mixes. So they had a training session there for 3 days where they trained U.S. Fish and Wildlife staff to upgrade their commercial operators licenses, and they did drill seeding of all the fairways, all of the greens, with those mixes of seeds. So 2 of the mixes were wildflower mixes, and 2 of them were grass mixes. One a fall or cold weather grass mix, and another a warm weather grass mix. And then they planted at the same time, because they had equipment operators there. They did holes and they planted over 400 shrubs and riparian vegetation plants along the stream in areas there. So the entire golf course has been reseeded. And the other thing they did, which if you've been on a golf course, there's a lot of terrain areas that they've artificially built up. So tee boxes and sand traps and other things, those were all completely removed. So the tee boxes were cut down so they're less attractive to four-wheelers and other vehicles coming in there. So the tee boxes were all cut, the sand traps were all removed, and that was all done in a matter of 3 or 4 days with heavy equipment and a retraining for U.S. Fish and Wildlife staff. So if you go there now and look at it, walk at it, the fairways are really beautiful in terms of the wildflower areas of tall grass, some tall grass, prairie grasses that are planted and stuff. So,
We'll find our balls now.
This is the creek. The reason we found the creek.
there's a really active management program that Mike is doing there in terms of restoring that to meadows, wildflower meadows, riparian buffers.
Plus, there are being plus the conservation district on the 23rd. We're planting 30 trees there. We're looking at part of the next grant cycle as being maybe establishing more riparian buffers. So it's in the process.
They're also removing some of the invasives, so they're one of the trees there is Bradford pears, which is a common landscape tree that has been planted for 20 years. It never previously seeded in on its own, but it is now seeding in lots of places, and it becomes a bit of a problem plant. So they have girdled at least 30 of the larger Bradford pears there that will ultimately be removed. So they're all, sort of altering, returning it back to native vegetation. So it's spectacular.
Anything else for the good of the order?
I think, can somebody give us an update on the Brodhead Creek Heritage Center, because the chapter has been very involved in that project. Maybe Louise.
Go ahead, Louise.
Hi, Louise Trout with Coconut Heritage Land Trust, future resident of Brodhead Creek Heritage Center. We had a meeting there yesterday, and today is supposed to be the day that it is done. It is not done. We probably have about 2 more weeks worth of work there. The offices look great. They don't have floors yet, but the interior is all painting. When I was there yesterday, they were doing some of the exterior trim. When I was there today, there was no one working outside because it's been a drizzling and rainy. They had big planks inside that they were staining and painting that were going to go up outside. So Ed Kramer says probably 2 more weeks, and I'm excited.
And how about the museum? Because I know everyone's excited about the possibility of the fly fishing museum.
Yeah,
The plans yesterday.
Well, yesterday at the meeting, we measured walls, so we know how much space we have for the fly fishing history. There are gonna be a number of panels there. There's gonna be 2 lockable cases, one for the local bamboo rod maker from back in the 20s through the 50s blue shower. I have 2 bamboo rods, 1 bamboo bait caster, 2 fly rods, and 2 more fly rods promised to put on display from the local rod maker. And there's going to be panels on the history of the Brodhead fishery, the Henryville House, the Hotel Rapids in Antelope, other destinations, the historic clubs on the Brodhead, and it's going to be neat. We're really excited about it. Scott Cesari's doing a collection of flies, Pocono fly patterns that originated here. That's going to be in a lockable case. One of our members, a woodworker, is doing the cases for us, and we have some grant money to do the panels, all the other panels that are going to be in there. There's going to also be an educational 3D map in the center of the foyer of Monroe County showing lots of things, but of course highlighting the Brodhead watershed. There's going to be an eagle educational display and a display on the flood of 55 so far. And we'll probably have a meeting room that will be display place for art like we have here. And there are some displays that we can move in and out to. The Pennsylvania Fly Fishing Museum has 2 big panels on the Poconos that they've had for some time that we can move in and out. So it's going to be a lot there eventually for educating the public.
And what's the anticipation of when that would open? Further down next year?
Well, according to Grant, we have to show significant progress on the history display by the end of the year. So okay. I'm not saying it'll be ready, but it'll be moved ahead for it to be significant.
So the organizations will get within their offices, and then work will continue on this.
I've done all the text for the panels. I'm collecting photographs to go with them, and then we have to have them made, put them up.
I would ask that we have our 3 talents back there. We have.
Yeah. We threatened to lock the doors and not let.
It's not going to be a lock-in.
We're not going to do it this time.
We do have some items to raffle off over here.
When Adam's not here next week, we will though.
That's fine.
Hats, shirts, etc. But then definitely the advocacy over here. We can cover an animal